Today, Turf Business TV will bring you the second part of our Question Time event filmed live at the Belfry. We're going to call in Scott Tingley now, who's obviously there with Watford. Scott, thanks for joining us this morning. I think you had a particular question that you wanted to ask, so do you want to fire away?
Yeah, it was more aimed at Andy Gray, to be honest, just for the professional football side of things. It was just with the financial implications of this year, does Andy think that clubs and venues would look to reduce the deficit in the summers? And maybe have concerts or different events, boxing or something like that, in order to kind of reduce the deficit? And what impact would that have on the summer window as we know it, especially in regard to renovations?
Well, that's directed straight at Andy Gray, so do you want to pick that up, Amy? Or do you want to dodge it?
Yeah, in terms of clubs, I suppose, putting more events on in the summer, I'm guessing you can't, with anybody in anything at the moment, nobody can commit to anything because you don't know where we're going to be next summer. So you can't be arranging concerts for next May, June if you don't know you can actually hold them. So I can't see how people are going to be doing that. They might look to hold something different out on the a football stadium or pitch is a big open outside area. So they might look to host different events. But obviously this summer itself has been, also the past summer was up in the air with everybody because of the football season finishing, continuing. Some people were able to renovate early, some did it late, some weren't able to do it at all. I know that obviously I wasn't at St George's at the time, but we have 10 pitches and only 4 of them were renovated properly. Some were done half and a couple weren't done at all. So that's with the FA, the top end of the game. So the clubs lower down, it's tougher still, and it's up to the individual clubs, I suppose, to prioritise if they're going to provide funding for the pitches next summer. But if you go, one summer's bad enough with not having a renovation of any sort, let alone a full one, but to then have 2 would be, you are then risking essentially player injury, postponements to a premium coming into season 21-22, I suppose. So I answered your question, Scott. I think it's just the uncertainty of everything still at the moment, that people just wouldn't know what they can and can't do still. And you can make plans, but with everything, it changes week by week. So we should have to wait and see on that, I think.
James, you're working at the other end of the scale in football. What sort of impacts are you seeing? Is your venue somewhere that does stage events, or is it totally reliant really on fans coming through the gates?
Oh, we've staged events in the past with boxing a couple of years back, and I know through rumours within Stevenage Football Club that they are looking to press ahead with getting an event on next summer. Whether they're penciling it in or they've heard something that I haven't, I don't know, but it's looking like giving me a 6 to 7 week window to get it ready for the season, with what I've heard. So if they're doing it here, then I'd imagine that quietly other clubs are looking at it as well.
Paul and Danny, you both lost world-renowned events this year. Paul, the British Open. Danny, the Eastbourne tennis, as I still call it. I know it's got a sponsor's name, but that escapes me at the moment. Paul, what's the impact been on Royal St George's down there in terms of your setup and your preparations, and ultimately what's happened with finances for you guys? Has it impacted that way at all?
Yeah, finance is severely impacted, mainly because we've had more people play golf and it's been absolutely packed, but that's been the members. So we've had no green fees as such this year, so the club have made a hell of a lot of money from green fees. with all the travel restrictions, the mixing, all the rest of it, it just wasn't possible. So from us, the ground's getting used more and everything, so it's harder to prepare to get it better. But the money's not come in. To be fair to the club, they've done quite well with the restructuring and everything, and we tried to spend less, etc., but without taking away anything of the golf course. Yeah, difficult question. I think we've got through it, but like we've said earlier, the uncertainty of everything, it's really hard to plan what to do next. It's sort of keep trying to do your best and carry on. We had a little bit of resurgence in September where we got a bit of income in, which helped a lot of people willing to play golf. I just feel the club can make the financial gains next year if we get back to normal. But for me personally, missing out the Open, with everything else that was going on, it didn't seem important as such. The decision was made. We had to do the best we can to keep the course as good as it could be and try and get it better for next year as well. I've probably spent the same amount on the course that I would in a normal year, so that's pushed costs up because we've got to keep it good, especially with next year coming on. So they have lost a little bit, but it all depends how long this lasts for. If the vaccine's coming through like they say, we could be back to normal in some way next year. So fingers crossed, really.
Okay. So it's not putting any pressure on your surfaces or your work. It's maybe longer down the line in terms of short term, but longer down the line with a lack of investment, it might be.
To be fair, for us, the investment has still been there. We haven't compromised on it.
Danny, big thing for Eastbourne, the tennis. Has there been discussions about cuts for you guys, or is it still the same kind of level that you're working to?
The impact of not having the tennis, we had our local MP when she addressed Parliament. I think it was quoted that we've lost as a town, we've lost over 10 million because of this. Then you have obviously the impacts to statutory services. So there's been a huge, huge loss to the borough of Eastbourne. How has that affected me and the controls I have? Luckily, this year, we've been fully supported. We've had no extra staff, but we have the full team, full complement. The budget hasn't been affected because I think what it's done is actually shown that health, well-being, and everything else is vital, and sport has a major, major role in that. It's not just the economic benefits. So our golf club has gone from strength to strength during this. So looking forward, I'm positive and have to remain that way and say that I'm looking forward to 21 because I think tennis will be back big. I really do. Now, how that will be, whether it will be closed doors, socially distanced event, I don't know. But the requirement for us as the surface provider will be the same. So I'm really looking forward to 21. Craig,
golf was one of the few sports that people could actually do, and pretty much every golf club was rammed through lockdown 1. Now that the handbrake's been firmly put on that, has that had an impact for you up at Carnoustie?
The thing that impacted us the most was lack of visitors. We rely quite heavily on visitor income, overseas visitors. Our membership here, I mean, we've got a full membership. We've got 2,500 season ticket holders, but they don't. Okay, they pay a bit of money, but it's not a lot of money. It's not. They think that money keeps the courses going, 3 courses going here, but it doesn't scratch the surface. We were able to put visitors that we had booked in this year, push them over, reschedule them for the next 2 to 3 years. So it's the next 2 to 3 years that we will really be busy as well. You know, we're looking for new income as well. So the golf courses are going to take a hammering over the next 2 to 3 years.
What sorts of new income can a golf course generate then?
Yeah, I mean, you're talking over 2.5 million. You know, that's we get 45,000 rounds a year, and out of that, it's probably 26, 27 of that is visitor rounds. But with that comes, you know, merchandise from the pro shop, you know, people going in for something to eat into a rookery, the restaurant and things like that. So it's knock-on effect on other departments as well. It's not just golf course.
So that new income streams, Gary, cricket. I mean, there was some cricket this year, but obviously I guess cricket has struggled for revenue. You also occasionally, well not occasionally, rely on events as well. Is that kind of put the handbrakes on you, or have you got strategies in place to keep your teams rolling?
Yeah, I think, I mean, firstly, I mean, cricket in general, you know, at one point they were talking of a £310 million loss, media, revenue streams, everything, a lot across the board. Fortunately, through the hard work of ECB, credit to sort of Pakistan and West Indies for touring, and obviously all the hard work at the grounds themselves, GS Bowl and Old Trafford, you know, the losses were only close to 150 million, which still is slightly worrying. But somebody said to me at the start of it, you're doing this to keep the lights on for a year. Hopefully it's just a year. And I do agree with Danny. Hopefully what this will promote is that next year we'll hopefully come back stronger. It's one thing I really do hope. But yeah, sort of going to Scott's question as well, we've had meetings as a club, you know, diversifying the business. Conference and events, we were busy, you know, every day of the week. Weddings, you know, all those sort of things had to stop. You know, I suppose one thing was we were we were a test and trace place for COVID at one point. Our car park, like a lot of clubs were. But yeah, I mean, we're even now selling, I think they're on about selling through Deliveroo, you know, sort of takeaways. But we've had no conference and events. I think at the start of lockdown 1, I think there was probably 4 or 5 people actually working at the ground, and that was at the start of the cricket season. So it is difficult. It's like everybody, you know, everybody's battling through it as best they can to keep going, and hopefully, with the vaccines being announced, that I think we might be doing something to do with that as well. So we're helping the NHS and just different ways of working. It's the only way you can do is try and change your revenue streams, really.
Lee, Eton. Had an impact, does it?
It does. Obviously, all our summer events and sort of courses they run through didn't happen. When students aren't in school, can they be expected to still be paying the full fees? So that does have an impact. And I think probably speaking to other groundsmen in schools especially, there's been the sort of reduced fees for parents, and without them fees coming in, we're not in a job. So there is an impact. Luckily enough, I'd say budgets have been the same as this year as was last year. But again, looking at how we're doing things, looking at what we can do in-house, looking at how, if budgets have dropped, how can we make our budget go that little bit further? So, you know, yes, Eton's a name, a lot of people have heard of it, but there is still impacts along the line. And even if it's not this year, potentially next year, you know, there could be looking at how we do save, and I'm sure other people are in that same boat. So I think it's just trying and making sure we're doing things properly and looking at every angle of how we can operate. And the kids are back, the students are back, they have been since September. We're not playing sports externally, everything's internally, so the pitches are probably being used a lot more. So we've still got to keep standards going.
Scott, have you got anything you wanted to add to that?
No, not really. I guess I'm in a similar situation, and we have a venue that can be used. We were fortunate enough to do a renovation. I wouldn't want to try and go through a season without one. So, but I mean, at the end of the day, in the event that we didn't get back to the Premier League, then I guess we'd be looking at different revenue streams as well. Our marketing department's been very quiet for obvious reasons, so they're going to have to justify sort of not an existence, but justify that they're doing their utmost to bring in extra revenue. So I guess we'll see.
Okay, thank you, Scott.